Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of Silo Season 2, Episode 3, titled Solo. Before I jump into a review, make sure to hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews. I also do celebrity interviews as well, and I will not be talking book spoilers here, so please don't leave them in the comments. So I'm going to break my review into two parts. First, we'll cover everything going on with Silo 17, and then we'll go to Silo 18. So Juliette quickly in this episode will learn that this mystery man who's played by Steve Zahn is actually this man named Solo, because he's all there by himself. So you have to wonder how far this guy's brain has gone that he doesn't even remember his original name anymore, and that he keeps thinking he's seeing people. And I just want to give a shout out real quick to Steve Zahn's performance in this whole episode, because he has to act through his eyes and you don't get to see his whole face. So he has to sell everything in the eyeballs, and he does such a good job with it. But Juliette will learn a lot of information from Solo this episode, like that there's 50 silos and that they are in number 17. And also that, well, we already know that no one forced the people out. It was a choice. And it's interesting because he really gets into what exactly happened, how a man named Ron, who was like the Juliette for their silo, went out not to clean, and he wrote that it was lies. And then he disappeared out of the lens view, and they painted over the lies, and that's when the fighting began in the silo. And that Solo was put into this vault at the time by the head of IT there, who was Russell. He was Russell's shadow. And basically Russell told him, your job is not to let anyone ever into the vault. So that is how important that vault is to protect. That is probably hiding a lot of important information. We see how important the vault is just to Bernard in the silo next door. So I'm sure at some point Juliette, hopefully she's using her head right, checks out inside that vault and what's going on and convinces Solo to trust her. But the big important thing is that everyone went out because they saw Ron not die outside. That was the big thing that gave them hope. And Juliette's really worried now because she's like, oh my God, my silo is going to start thinking that and run outside and they're all going to die. I also like the nice touch you see in the background, the graffiti that says Ron Tucker lives. So this is like Juliette lives. And Juliette's also in another issue where she is suitless. Her suit was destroyed. So she's talking to Solo throughout the episode what they should do, what she could use in that silo, but he eventually thinks of firefighter suits. And the biggest problem is that the closest ones are underwater. But before we even get into how she plans to get there, she has her explaining she does for Silo of why people clean and that trick that they play of fooling people that it's actually beautiful outside. And she figured it out when she saw a recording of a bunch of creatures across the sky. I love that line because I love moments in the show where it kind of reminds you forget that, like, oh yeah, she wouldn't know what a bird is. So it's funny hearing that. But what makes Solo an interesting character and one you don't know if you can fully trust is little things like Juliette when she's asking him, why are you alive and everyone else survived? And she also asks about the more recent bodies that are in the hall, that they're not as decomposed as the other bodies she saw. And that's when you'll see she closes the door that lets them in the room, and it says, we will get in sooner or later. So there was some confrontation here having between Solo and whoever these people who wrote down the door. They're probably the people's bodies that are on the ground right there. I think this also is what got Juliette to feel a little more for Solo here, that maybe he wasn't the full aggressor here. Now, when Juliette shares her plan with Solo to get the firefighter suits, Rebecca Ferguson does maybe 5 different accents here, so my worry about that continuing on from season 1 is now realized, and it's very frustrating because, again, Rebecca Ferguson is an incredible actress. I loved her performance in Dune 2 especially. I loved her in Mike Flanagan's recent movie, The Shining sequel, so I don't know why this keeps happening, and it's really, really frustrating because for me, it always takes me out a bit. But anyway, Solo needs to come out and help. She needs his help to get this plan to succeed. So she tries first by pleading him to help her save 10,000 people, but also her seeing that graffiti that's there of those guys threatening him, that doesn't work with Solo. You see they're on the floor dead. So she does reverse psychology, and that's what works on Solo. He comes out. And we see the bearded Solo now, and he's like, I've never come out this far, but he starts bugging when he just goes a little bit on the makeshift bridge. And he even says to Juliette, you really are here, aren't you? So it shows how far his brain had gone with hallucinating people. But it's going to be baby steps for him, so I'm excited to see this relationship form. I'm excited to see Juliette with another character, so I did really like what was going on this side of the story. It was pretty good. Now, everything in Silo 18, there's a lot going on here. So we see someone's son in Mechanical. His name is Teddy. He's taken for the graffiti of Juliette Lives. Shirley makes clear she is not going to let them make an example out of Mechanical and her son to the mother. So we know Shirley's very aggressive, where Knox is the complete opposite in how he handles things, and Knox is still very sketchy. But while this is all starting to brew with Mechanical, Bernard brings Meadows into the vault. They talk about the Order, and you see they have different opinions about the Order, where really Bernard is to the book type of personality, where Meadows is actually probably saying the more wise thing to avoid a confrontation, that you can't just go by the Order word for word, and you can do some adjustments, and it definitely needs some updating. But she's like, you need to show mercy and release the man you're imprisoned from Mechanical, and maybe get someone from the mids. But will Bernard do that? No. He's not going to listen to the good advice. He's got too big of an ego. But Meadows also suspicious that Bernard is making up that Juliette wanted to clean. So this will start a trend here of now her being suspicious of him and losing trust in him. Now, where it gets even crazier and really just shows you how fascinating this character Bernard is from the top. You watch through this episode Bernard's master plan. Bernard and Sims, we learned first off, drug people to forget certain things, which was wild. But he wants to know if this man Patrick has been drugged yet. And this is where the start of Bernard's plan begins, because we see Sims threatens Patrick. He hints that he can drug them all back before his wife died. And he says, I want to be drugged back before I met her. 22 years. So Sims says, okay, they make a deal of this, but you don't know what Patrick has to hold up there yet. Then we see that Cooper is the one who tells Knox that Shirley is planning to free Teddy, because now Cooper thinks Shirley's going too far. It's why Knox will be there with the Raiders, because Knox is a snitch and told the higher-ups that this was going to happen, and he's standing there with them blocking the door where Teddy is. Meanwhile, Sims is recruiting an older Raider, Reggie, who has a great shot that we learn, and he wants to send him down to Mechanical, owes him a favor. So we know that Bernard's plan is, the part of Reggie's use is to kill Patrick, who they're tricking as well, and to shoot him after he throws the firebomb. Unfortunately, Cooper's there at the wrong time, wrong place, and you'll see when this happens and Patrick throws a firebomb, they both get killed and shot by Reggie. So Shirley will confront Knox later on, and you just see that basically they have a different way of doing this, but again, I still don't trust Knox. But he mentions a name on a wall down below where they used to hang out. We knew that because Juliette had shared that story that they basically left her down there. But they saw this wall with all the names, so he thinks he figured out why they're doing that. I'd love to hear your guys' theories on that. Now, I liked everything going on there with the story in this silo, but what I wasn't crazy about was everything going on with Billingsley, which I thought was just weirdly handled. See, Billingsley will talk to the last Raider, and he tells Meadows that she said she didn't actually hear Juliette say she was going to go outside. So this already makes it even more suspicious. But when he then confesses to Meadows that Juliette told him that she didn't say that she was going to go outside, he wasn't sure if he could believe Juliette. And it's crazy he waited to tell Meadows this too. So very, very weird part of Billingsley to behave this way this later on right now. I feel like there's just something off with the consistency of his character from the end of season 1 to now. And then he goes back to the pact where they connect that there should have been a inquiry if there's a doubt by a witness, which has now happened according to the pact. But it's just annoying that Billingsley wasn't more aggressive on this, knowing that Juliette said that, and why wouldn't he believe Juliette? I mean, he knows her endgame here. It's also interesting that Meadows has a relic projector and is watching vids of a family on the beach and then sledding on the snow, and it ends with the child birthday party at 1. And it's interesting with her character and wanting to go out, and how as the episode goes on, you see she has some admiration for Juliette Nichols here and kind of wants to do what she did. And on that point, Bernard sets up Meadows' escape. He starts to measure her, but Meadow calls him out on the firebomb plan. She knows that was him, how she didn't listen to him. It was a play right out of the Order, and that play is to get people to retaliate against Mechanical and crush the rebellion. But he still lies straight to her face that it wasn't him. So then Meadows calls him out for lying about Juliette asking to go out. So clearly there's some heat there. And it's just showing you this breakdown where I don't think Meadows is going to be as loyal to Bernard as this goes on. Now, the last thing we'll see in this silo is everything going on with Dr. Nichols. This couple here we meet has another shot at baby on the lottery. It's their time. And you see that he has this monologue about how perfect it is having this baby, Juliette, and that experience to give them hope. And it also connects him to this woman and will contribute to his change of mind here and be a rebel himself. He's getting that part of Juliette and him inside of him, inspiring him that she's doing. She's inspiring so many people, Juliette, because what he does is he sees in the computer his orders were to pretend to take the birth control out, but actually put another one right back in. But he doesn't do it. So it just is great. And it's also nice to see that this couple were supporters of Juliette too. So it's not a bad idea to have offspring born into that belief system. But it'll be interesting to see what happens to Doc Nichols if that gets found out. But he's finally doing the right thing and taking risks here. He's having that character growth. Now, overall, I'm going to give this episode a 7.7. I thought it was good, but I'm not as hooked as I was in season 1. I'm kind of waiting it still to grip me back in or maybe learn a little bit more about the characters in our main silo 18, where I feel like with Shirley, Knox, and having so much time with them, I still don't know much about them. I'm just really not that invested in even what happens to them, or even a character like Cooper dying. I don't really care. So I need more of caring. It feels like there's a piece missing because I love watching Rebecca Ferguson and Juliette's character. I love watching Tim Robbins do his thing, but I feel like we're still missing that Rashida Jones character, and the actor's name's forgetting, but her husband in the show, he was great too. We're missing like one more like third tier here of a big actor that we know a lot about their character. It just feels like something has to come of that, and I hope maybe that's what they're planning for Solo here. I'm sure that is, but it's just this part of like these moving parts happening so much in Silo 18 that some of them are just not as invested in. But overall, I'm still interested in the story overall, and again, with everything happening with Juliette the most. So let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment, try to respond as many as I can. Hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews and my interviews, and I'll see you next time.